Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a HIMI gouache palette unboxing. I got the 112 color one, the big guy right here with the white case. I'm so excited to unbox these. I used to have them and then I took a year off from painting and they got moldy and gross and I had to throw them away. So I'm really excited because there's going to be lots of colors and it's going to be so pretty, and I got the new Twin Cup version. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun having more colors but less of them, because the HIMI gouache really does go a long way. So let's get started. Okay, so these are the two Twin Cups. You get two colors on each side, obviously, which I think is nice. You get a little bit less of each color, but you get a lot more colors. I actually really prefer this. And I already started taking the foils off. I didn't make you guys watch this. As you can see right now, it's a super painful process. Nobody wants to watch that. But before I get into my thoughts on the palette and the quality of the paints and also showing you how I decided to swatch out all my colors, let's just enjoy some B-roll real quick of this entire palette filling up magically fast. Plastic would have driven me nuts. Okay, so I got them all unboxed, unwrapped, took the covers off, whatever you want to call it, and I'm so excited to pause. This girl thought she was excited. She didn't know what she was getting herself into. This swatching crap took forever, and I do not recommend you do it the way I did unless you find it very cathartic. I thought I was going to, and I didn't. I was super impatient, and I just wanted it to be over. But, of course, I persevered, so let's get back to the video. See these colors again. I really miss this palette, even though I do have some nicer Holbein acrylic gouache. The jelly gouache, I'm just really excited to work with. I find it very inspiring to look at all of these colors. I know that I can mix most of these colors on my own. I'm not really worried about losing that skill. If that's something that you need to work on, you might not want to get this fast of a palette, or maybe you want to start with just some more basic colors so it forces you to mix a little bit more. Or on the other hand, if you have trouble mixing colors and it's kind of difficult for you and you want your art in a different place while you're learning to mix colors, this is something great for you so you can still get the look that you're trying to achieve. So even though you have 112 shades here, that doesn't mean that you will never mix your paints and that everything you'll ever need is here. It just kind of depends on what you're making. Okay, so this was the very beginning of my swatching journey. If you can't kind of tell what madness I've created here, I am going every other color vertically and horizontally so that the colors will butt up against each other perfectly is the end goal. If you saw in the very beginning of the video what the swatch sheet kind of turned out to look like. And while I do think it looks really cool the way it turned out, it was not worth the headache and all the washi tape that I went through to make this happen, because I had to do all these squares that you see here and then take all the tape off when it dried and then put the tape back down over the painted swatches that I already did, creating barriers for the new ones, and I probably should have just done it by hand. But enough about that, onto the paints themselves. I think this palette is so cool. I love the Twin Cups. Yes, you do get less paint when you're getting these little half cups, but with my last HIMI gouache palette set, I really didn't go through paint that fast, and I feel like they would just dry up before I ever got to use them anyways. So having more colors but less of each color for me makes more sense. I also do a lot more work in my sketchbook. I'm not doing these very large paintings, so I don't need that much paint. I think this is a very practical amount of paint. I also really like the changes that they made to the case. The case feels sturdier. It feels like it's a little more airtight than it was before. I was a little skeptical about the bottom because it seems like each of the little holders for the paint cups has an opening now. And my first thought was that paint was going to get in through there. But thinking about how the plastic overlays onto the case itself, I don't think that's actually going to be an issue. But the side little locking mechanism that goes on the lid for the paints now does a fantastic job squeezing out air and actually locking onto the sides. Okay, just on a side note, you can see I completely ditched the washi tape at this point. I was not about to put another layer down. I just freehanded the rest of these swatches and it went fine. But back to the palette, the handle's improved. It used to be very chintzy and mine actually broke within 2 weeks of having it, but now the handle is this stronger, different material on top. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but if you had the old gouache palette, then you know what I'm talking about. It's just better in my opinion. The formula itself seems to be the same. Some colors are a little more fluid than others. I really don't know why that is. For example, some of the yellows would just very easily glide right onto the paper, whereas some of like the lavender, lighter white kind of colors, they were a little bit thicker. Makes no difference to me. It's just a matter of how much water do I need to put on my brush when I'm using that particular color. So that seems to be the same. Now, the only thing that I don't really love about the HIMI Gouache palette, and this is kind of nitpicky, it's not really that big of a deal, is the way that they have arranged their colors. I wasn't sure if I should rearrange them to what made more sense to me because, for example, none of the oranges are really next to each other. You can kind of see it even as I'm swatching. Orange is next to green, but not next to the yellow that's like 2 colors below it. It just, I don't know, it seems kind of odd to me. But I decided not to rearrange them because the gouache palette did come with its own color chart, and it actually has names on it this time, which I don't believe the last palette I bought had English names on it. So I really like using that as a reference. I think with my tutorials, I would like to tell you guys what color I'm using so that you can easily reference it. I know a lot of people have the same palette or a similar variation of the palette. So having those names is really helpful, and I decided for that reason to keep everything in that order, even though it felt a little chaotic. If you hear little rustling noises in the background, it's not my husband this time, it's my son who is drawing over on my easel and digging through his markers, so sorry if you can hear that. It's been a couple days since I finished this swatch palette. I spent a little bit of time cleaning up some of the boxes. I didn't really need to, but some of the bleed that was happening with the paints, with the washi tape, and how it didn't stay nice and crisp like I was expecting was super annoying. So I just went through and cleaned some of those up. I think this is going to be super helpful, even though it was super annoying to make. I appreciate that HIMI provides this palette, and it's really helpful because it shows the names of the actual colors, like violet, lilac, purple, rose, for example. And the last HIMI gouache palette I had, at least as far as English colors go, they didn't have the names, at least not that I saw, or maybe they were just on the lid, so once you threw the lid away, it was gone. So this is super helpful if I'm going to be making you guys tutorials and I want to share what color I'm using, or if I just want to remember what color I'm using. Typically, the printed ink version is not quite as accurate as what it actually looks like in real life. But yeah, so my final thoughts on this palette are, yes, buy it. I know they're not professional grade gouache, but I think they're pretty darn good, especially for the price. I mean, it was about $55 for this entire palette. That's nuts. So highly recommend. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you next time.